I present to you Miss Betty Stevens.
Yeah.
And so first of all, let's start at the very beginning. So what day were you born?
August the 22nd, 1911.
And what was your birth name?
My birth name was, I had a Polish name.
Yes.
And Russ used to like my Polish name. It was Cheshire. And he liked that.
Yeah, I do too.
You know, and when I started first grade, of course the teachers years ago always try to give you an American name. So they gave me a name Bessie. I hated it. I hated it. So after I was in school a couple of years, I decided I was going to change it to Betty. I've been Betty ever since. And my maiden name was Mendick. And very simply spelt. My father spelt it with a YK, and at school they spelt it, I guess, more Americanized with an ICK, D-I-C-K.
Yeah.
And of course that's the way it's been. You know, we all did it after a while, my sisters and everything.
So you were born in Poland?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I came here when I don't know the exact age I was, but I was told that I was either a year and a half old when I came here. And my brother was 2.5 years older.
And do you know the city that you were born in?
It was in the suburbs of Warsaw. That's all I know. And the reason I know that is because when I applied for Social Security when I was, 65, I don't have a birth certificate. And so they wanted to know where I was born and so on and so forth. And I gave them all what information I felt I had, which was not very much. And they wrote to from the Social Security office in Connecticut, because I was 7 years younger than my husband. He was retired and I wasn't, of course. I had just quit my job. And so I gave them what information I had, and they wrote from there to the Polish embassy in Washington, and I had to pay for all the services. And they were going to send to Poland to see if they could get any information. I gave them my father's name and my mother's maiden name and so on and so forth. And they said they would let me know, and they got in touch with me. Oh, I'd say a month or 6 weeks later. It took that time, and they said they had absolutely no records of any kind in the suburbs of Warsaw after the war, after World War I. Whatever records they had before World War I, and I was born before World War I. And of course the war started over there earlier than it did in this country. We didn't get into the war here until 1917, where they were fighting probably for 10 years before that. And my father was in the part where he lived was dominated by the German. It was part of the German-controlled Poland. And after the war, I guess it all reverted back to the original Poland or something like that. I don't know that much about it.
So what was your father's name?
Stanley.
And
my brother's name was Stanley also.
Okay. And your mother's name?
Alexandria. See, some things I know and I remember them.
Yeah. And what do you remember about your parents?
I remember about my father, he was a very good person. He never laid a hand on us. He always talked to us. He had a lot of patience with us. He worked hard to provide for us.
And what did he do?
He worked at the wire mill. That was his, and the way he got to get there, I guess somebody he knew was lived in that town when he came here. And that's where he got started. And so, of course, when we came, I guess he was in this country about a year or so before he got enough money to get us to come to this country, or 6 months. I don't know exactly, so I mean, I couldn't tell you that. And what else was I going to say? And he always had time for us, and I never heard, that's another thing, I never heard any squabbling between my mother and father. Of course, I was young, probably I wasn't paying much attention to it. But I always felt that we had a very quiet and peaceful home, which is, nice to kind of remember. At least that's the way I remember it.
Yeah, that's great. And your mother?
What?
Wait, what do you remember about her?
I don't remember that much about her because she was always busy. I had the 2 younger children, and I remember her from when she was sick. I was conscious of it then. So I had a new baby. The baby lived 2 days, and my mother died a week later. She was in bed about 9 days or so. And
she died from complications of childbirth.
she developed pneumonia. My father told me that afterwards when I questioned her a couple of times. He said, the doctor said she developed, she was bedridden. She couldn't get out of bed. And the baby lived 2 days. And I don't remember much about my mother at all, but I mean, there was nothing outstanding. In other words, she never beat me or shook me up that I remember or anything like that. So, I mean...
And how old were you when she died?
9. I was just 9 that August when she died in December. She died December 9th. It was the anniversary last week. She died in 1920. That's how far back it is. 80 some odd years.
So what would you say is your earliest memory from childhood?
I would say my most vivid earliest memory is after my mother died, I was tied down with these responsibilities that I didn't know how to handle. Because my father had to go to work. We lived in the country. Had a coal stove in the kitchen. She died in December. Laid the law down to me, don't go near the stove. Don't let the other 2 little girls go near the stove. Take care of them. If the fire goes out, it's a coal stove, you know, there's so much cold in it that you can leave in there. If the fire goes out, put them to bed and go to bed with them until I come home. And he said, I have to go to work so we can have a place to live. And I did the best I could. And when he come home, he fixed supper for us and see that we all got off to bed and got washed up and so on. And I had to stand, I remember this, I had to stand on years ago they used to have little wooden boxes that canned food used to come in. That was before paper cartons. And he got me a little box, yay high, maybe about a foot high or so, because I couldn't reach the sink to wash the dishes. He taught me to wash the dishes at 9 years of age. So you see, I had responsibilities. And so I did that and I had to miss out on school until he married a neighbor of ours' aunt. She was widowed recently, and it was, I imagine, a marriage of convenience about 3 months later. As she was a widow and she had 3 children, and she came to live with us. She lived in the city. And, but my sisters were so used to me doing for them. They wouldn't live, and my stepmother was much older than my mother. She was older than my father. And my mother was only 31 or so, 32 when she died. And my 2 sisters wouldn't let her get anywhere near them. They were used to me doing everything for them. No, I don't want, don't touch me, leave me alone. And they scream, especially the little one. As I said, she wasn't housebroken. I had to put her on a pot and change her diaper and so on and so forth. I learned the hard way, believe me. I learned the hard way. And that's about all I can remember about that. And we always had a good relationship. I never abused my sisters. I never laid a hand on them. I never lost my temper with them. And to get them to go to sleep, I tell them stories, because do I have to go to sleep? The sun is shining, especially my older sister, the 2 of them. The other one was close to 5 years of age. Of course, she gave me back talk. And
so tell me their names.
Yes, Gladys is my older sister, the one that was 4 and a half when my mother died, and the other one was Ida. That's the one still alive. Gladys died about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. Ida. So I was up there visiting her here a few weeks back, and she says, "You're the only mother I remember."
Yeah, I'm sure.
We still get along well.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my visit with her, and we did things together. And she was glad that I was able to come up.
Yeah.
So, but